The scent of cleaning products mingled with the expensive perfume she could never afford. The sharp click of hurried heels echoed down the glass and steel corridors, a constant reminder that she didn't belong there. Among the muffled laughter of colleagues who treated her as invisible, she bent over the bucket, scrubbing a floor she would never walk on as an equal. Yet no one knew that the humble woman with work-worn hands carried a secret powerful, enough to change forever the fate of the company, and of the man who ruled it. The Aurora Group building was a colossal tower of glass and concrete, reflecting the city's gray sky as if it owned the clouds themselves. Inside, spotless hallways and crystal chandeliers created a scene of unattainable luxury. The air smelled of expensive coffee and imported perfume, a brutal contrast to the damp rag in her hand. Elisa walked with her bucket of water, stepping aside for elegant suits and hurried heels. Each movement seemed to draw looks of disdain. "Look who's here, the queen of the mop," one secretary murmured, not caring if Elisa heard. "Careful, or she'll get your designer shoes wet," another one laughed. The laughter rippled like a small but cruel wave. Elisa lowered her eyes, swallowing her silence. That was her place, invisible, underestimated, always on the margins. And then, at the heart of that empire, he appeared. Adriano Vasconcelos, CEO of Aurora Group, strode down the hallway with confident steps. The immaculate cut of his suit seemed made to declare his authority. Tall, imposing, with eyes that never lingered on trivial details. He was the kind of man who made others bow without uttering a word. The conversation ceased instantly. The secretaries who had mocked Elisa straightened their postures, fixed their hair, and masked their smiles. Elisa, kneeling on the floor, remained quiet, head down, as if she were just part of the floor she scrubbed. Adriano passed by her without even noticing. But for a fleeting instant, the young woman's eyes gleamed with something no one there could understand. It wasn't fear. It wasn't submission. There was a secret buried deep in those tired eyes. And as the corridor once again filled with whispers and stifled laughter, a silent truth lingered in the cleaner's gaze. The next afternoon, the company's main atrium was full of employees. A sudden announcement had summoned everyone for a meeting with the CEO. The vast glass-walled space caught the golden light of late afternoon, casting long shadows across the polished marble. As always, Elisa was in her uniform, quietly scrubbing the corners no one bothered to look at. The bucket beside her reflected the bright lights like a poor mirror amid such opulence. Adriano entered with his team of directors, imposing as ever, and took his place before the crowd. His mere presence was enough to silence any noise. "We face a challenge ahead," he said, his deep voice reverberating through the hall, an international contract that could change the company's future. "But only the best will have a place in this negotiation." Murmurs spread among the employees, all eager to prove themselves. This was when arrogance became most visible. Colleagues scrambling to outshine one another, secretaries whispering, disdainful glances darting like arrows. One director, a man with a forced smile and a sharp tongue, seized the moment. His name was Marcelo Fontes, infamous for his sarcastic tone and the vanity that made him even crueler to those he considered beneath him. He let out a loud chuckle upon noticing Elisa trying not to draw attention. "Just imagine," he said, pointing at her, "if even the cleaner decided to give her opinion on the company's strategies, maybe she could teach us how to wipe out the competition with a mop." The crowd laughed in chorus. Phones were discreetly raised to record. Some whispered, others laughed out loud. Elisa stayed still, eyes lowered, absorbing every word without betraying a single reaction. Adriano's expression didn't change. He remained as composed as ever. But his eyes, for the briefest moment, shifted toward her, a quick, calculated glance that no one else noticed. The laughter echoed, but there was something unsettling about the silence that followed. No one believed she would even respond. No one imagined she could try, yet the silence that followed spread through the hall like invisible fire. The room still vibrated with muffled laughter when Elisa lifted her face. For the first time, her eyes held neither tears nor shame, only an uncommon calm, almost unsettling to those who looked at her. She placed the rag back into the bucket, rose slowly, and, without asking permission, stepped a little closer to the gathered group. The sound of heels, coughs, and murmurs stopped, as if that simple action carried unexpected weight. "Maybe I don't understand international contracts," she said, her voice firm yet gentle. "But I know that dirt isn't cleaned by sweeping it under the rug." Her words were met with surprise. Some laughed louder, finding her boldness amusing. Others recorded every second, eager to spread it as a joke in the hallways. Marcelo laughed harshly. "Look at that! The philosopher with a mop. Gonna teach us business with cleaning metaphors." The audience burst into new laughter. Even some who had felt sympathy for her looked away, afraid of becoming targets of ridicule themselves. But amid the collective laughter, Adriano did not laugh. His gaze remained fixed, enigmatic, as though each of her words echoed somewhere deep inside him. A young intern, perhaps the only one brave enough to show empathy, tried to intervene. That wasn't necessary. "Mr. Marcelo, it was just a comment." "Be quiet." "Girl," Marcelo cut her off, sarcastic. "If you start defending the cleaner, you'll drag yourself down to her level." The crowd laughed again, but now there was a small crack in their chorus. Some began to feel uncomfortable. And then something subtle happened. Elisa, instead of backing down, held Marcelo's gaze for a few seconds. There was no fear, no submission, only a serene look that left a silent question hanging in the air. Who was she? Really? When everyone thought she would remain silent, something unexpected began to unfold. The air in the hall felt heavier, as if time had slowed. Elisa drew a deep breath and spoke words that didn't sound improvised, but rooted, forged in quiet nights and hidden books. "Cleaning dirt isn't just about soap and rags," she said, lifting her chin. "It's about knowing where it hides, even when everyone pretends not to see. Companies don't fall because they fail at contracts. They fall because arrogance stains every decision." A murmur rippled through the audience. This wasn't just audacity. There was reason, clarity. Marcelo tried to laugh it off, but the sound came out forced. "Street philosophy," he scoffed, crossing his arms. "You think you understand business?" Elisa didn't flinch. "Business is about people, and people without respect can't build anything that lasts." The words landed like a stone. At the center of the room, the eyes that once mocked her now wavered between ridicule and reflection. Some directors exchanged discreet looks, as if recognizing the inconvenient truth in the words of the woman who, just minutes earlier, had been invisible. Adriano, until then still as stone, tilted his head slightly, his dark, attentive eyes fixed on her as if something inside him had just been confirmed. The atmosphere shifted. It was no longer a spectacle of humiliation. It was a silent battlefield, where each of her words chipped away at Marcelo's power. The director swallowed hard but kept up his mocking tone. "Nice speech, but you're just a cleaning lady. Nothing more." Elisa smiled, not with scorn but with compassion. "And yet, I managed to make you stop laughing." A deep silence spread across the hall. The laughter died. The spark of superiority in Marcelo's eyes faltered. For the first time, he seemed to hesitate. And suddenly, the air was filled with a strange sense of reverence. What she displayed wasn't mere wit, it was dignity. The silence in the hall was almost suffocating. No one dared move. Elisa stood there in her simple uniform, her hands still damp from work. Yet before her even the finest suits looked fragile. Marcelo, red with anger and shame, tried to regain control. "Don't fool yourself, girl. You're just a janitor. Nothing more." But his voice no longer carried the same weight. People didn't laugh anymore. Some averted their eyes. Others looked at Elisa with timid respect, almost ashamed for having mocked her minutes before. Then Adriano stepped forward. The entire hall held its breath. His shoes echoed on the marble, each step heavier than the last. He stopped in front of her, close enough to see the droplets of water clinging to her calloused hands. "You speak with conviction," Adriano said, his deep voice almost a whisper that carried more weight than any shout, like someone who has known the pain of exclusion. The crowd watched, puzzled, not understanding what was happening. Elisa remained composed. "It's not exclusion, sir. It's invisibility. What hurts isn't being rejected. It's not being seen. The words cut through the air like a blade. The audience shifted uneasily. Many there knew, deep down, they too had ignored people like her, thinking of them as part of the company's furniture. Adriano took a slow breath. Something in his expression, until then rigid and unyielding, softened. Words from someone who sees what few can't. Marcelo lost his composure completely. Don't tell me you're taking this woman seriously, Adriano. She's just. But he couldn't finish. Before he could, Adriano turned to him slowly, with a look that chilled everyone in the hall. Watch your words. The simple sentence carried the weight of a verdict. The director stepped back, embarrassed, swallowing his own arrogance. And then a truth began to surface, still hidden from most, but visible in the exchanged looks between Adriano and Elisa. She wasn't just another employee. She carried something that could change everything. But the final blow wouldn't come from force or power. It would come from a truth everyone had chosen to forget. The hall remained wrapped in a tense silence, as if everyone had forgotten to breathe. Elisa adjusted her simple uniform, straightened her posture, and calmly picked up the rag she had left in the bucket. The gesture seemed ordinary but carried symbolic weight. While everyone else still battled with sharp words and calculating looks, she simply returned to her work with dignity. Adriano watched her, unreadable, but his eyes revealed a respect. No one had imagined the CEO could offer someone in her position. Marcelo, on the other hand, had shrunk, his slumped shoulders and trembling mouth betrayed a man who had lost more than an argument. He had lost his moral authority before everyone. None of his words would carry the same weight again. Elisa then broke the silence. A person's worth isn't in the title they hold, but in what they leave behind when they're gone. Without waiting for a response, she calmly wrung out the rag and began cleaning a small stain on the marble, as if that mattered more than the stares still fixed on her. No one laughed. No one dared speak. Those simple, steady words echoed louder than any rehearsed speech. She walked away, leaving the hall with her damp uniform and worn shoes making little sound. On the pristine floor, there was no rush in her steps, only the serenity of someone who knew she had nothing left to prove. And when the door closed behind her, no one dared laugh again, for they had all understood what they had just witnessed. The following days at Aurora Group were different. The cruel laughter that used to echo in the hallways gave way to a respectful silence whenever Elisa passed with her bucket and rag. The looks that once passed right through her now followed her cautiously, as if trying to understand the source of her quiet strength. Marcelo, once arrogant, had lost his shine of authority. His remarks no longer drew laughter. Instead, they were met with cold stares or even reproach. His downfall required no official punishment, only the public humiliation of being defeated by the dignity of someone who never tried to impose herself through power. Adriano, the CEO, seemed changed as well, more attentive, more humane. In meetings, he began to listen even to the interns. In the corridors, his gaze sought Elisa. Though she continued her work as if nothing had changed, there was something about her that disarmed him. Something he knew he couldn't ignore for long. And the truth few suspected, that Elisa carried within her a story yet untold. A quiet link to Adriano's own fate remained hidden, like a discreet flame waiting for the right moment to ignite the world around them. But for everyone who had witnessed that scene in the hall, a lesson had already spread beyond the company walls. In homes, in cafes, in university corridors, it was whispered. The cleaner stood up to the director and silenced the entire room. What once seemed merely a scene of humiliation had become a story of resilience, echoing in the hearts of those who needed courage to lift their heads in the face of scorn. And thus, in the heart of a city accustomed to arrogance and indifference, a universal reminder was born. In a world blinded by power, sometimes a single gesture of quiet dignity is enough to change the course of history. And that's how Elisa proved that true strength doesn't lie in titles or expensive clothes, but in the courage to hold your dignity even when others try to tear you down. Only sincere words and a steady heart to show that respect has no uniform. If this story inspired you and made you believe that small acts can transform big places, Subscribe to the channel to hear more stories like Elisa's, full of emotion, life lessons, and endings that warm the heart.